Live. We are live. All right, sorry for the technical difficulty. Sorry about coughing. I'm Barry Schwartz, and today I have with me a former Google spam fighter. I'm going to have problems pronouncing your name. I should have asked you that before we started. I'm going to try. This way you can laugh at me. Murat.
Yes. Okay.
Close or no? How about you pronounce your name and then we'll introduce you?
All right. So my name is Murat. I'm a former Googler and now working as an SEO consultant.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for joining me. Hopefully we'll have some nice questions to ask you. My main purpose behind this is really to learn a little bit more about the mindset of Google spam fighters, what they do on a daily basis, why they do what they do, and why people like you no longer do that. So first, if you could tell us a little bit about what your role was while working at Google. Did you change departments at all? What was your typical day like as a Google spam fighter or whatever your role was at Google?
Sure, it's a good question to start with. So what was my role? It was called as product quality analyst. I got a senior after a couple of years in Google. And before, I started in SQE, Search Quality Evaluation team. And it was mainly the focus is to enforce the Google policies to search results so that we are ensured that the search results are quality enough for a great user experience. And we were trying to identify the spam techniques, and also we were trying very hard to find solutions to them in scale. But after a while, our department evolved a little bit, and we also start getting the universal search results problem as well. So after a while, I started working on some universal issues, not just the organic search results, but there was a clear distinction between organic and paid. So I was never in any projects that implies any commercial issues. So it was just the organic search. And my day-to-day business was, let me give you some idea for introduction. While I started Google, it was 2010, and I worked there for 5 years. And in the first 3 months, the basic thing I did was actually a monkey business. Like I was just trying to understand a page from an engineering perspective, like trying to develop a gut feeling what a website is. So I was trying to identify if the site is spam, not spam, low quality, or I was skipping the site if it doesn't fit to these 3 categories. And it just really takes 3 months. And I was holding a master's degree in computer engineering, and I was also studying computer engineering. I was like, what am I doing here? But after a while, I go to my manager, and it was Victor. He said to me, like, champ, like, take it easy, because you need to get trained first. You need to understand and ramp up what we are doing here, trying to achieve. And after a while, I started joining the different projects to understand spam techniques, because spam techniques are always very evolving, and we need to identify the patterns first, and then apply the patterns in scale to catch the spam in more efficient ways. Because otherwise, it's just going to be a never-ending job to find the spam one by one and penalize it. So my team, of course, was penalizing web pages or websites manually, but we were also integrated to web spam engineering team. So I was collaborating on a couple of projects with them, although I wasn't an engineer in Google, but I was writing programs, writing internal codes, mostly in scripts like Python. And the biggest challenge I took was to analyze the large sets of data. So I was trying to create dashboards to improve what we do and try to understand where we are coming from and to analyze the problem in a more clear way. So the dashboards were going to the directors, going to the managers, going to engineers, and they were trying to understand what are the factors that these search results are not really creating great user experience. So it was trying to understand the life of a query, the entire career. And I didn't change any teams, but my team evolved by itself. So I was always a part of SQE, but then SQE became a more integral part of product quality operations. So that means first, when I started, I was just focusing on organic search results. But after a while, I started working on YouTube issues, Blogspot issues, Google Plus issues, and etc. And also, I joined in different teams, like how do you say that? Deep teams, like for example, task forces, and cross-collaborated with different task forces. So I was this guy who is responsible to guide the Turkish webmaster community. So that gave me a bit more visibility on the search community. So I remember back in Wild, we were communicating over Twitter, or I was sending a pictures, then we were saying, oh, the Dublin office was great, kind of visibility like this. And that enabled me to communicate the search guidelines more clearly to the webmasters. So I took this role for like 3 years, and that was one of the most fun part of my role. The other parts were technical and more analytical.
Interesting. So you enjoyed talking specifically with the webmaster community over the more technical aspects of the job.
Yeah.
So you talked a little about how you were really part of a team that did a lot of manual actions, but yet you wrote a lot of code or Python scripts to create these dashboards for, I guess, directors, managers, and engineers so they can see what's going on. This code that you wrote, did it help? Was it specifically around reporting around the manual actions, or more about you figuring out these are the types of manual actions we're issuing? I wrote code hopefully to help you find this in more of an automated fashion, and then maybe send out automated manual actions, if that makes sense?
Well, that's a great question, but it's a tricky one as well. So I guess I shouldn't be going too much in detail in this manner.
You can give detail, it's okay.
Yeah, but still, I'll try to give you a hint so that you can make a more educated guess of what we were doing. As I mentioned, we were collaborating as an SQE team members like with engineering. So what we were doing is like first try to identify what are the patterns of spam. Let's say as an example, having too much repeated keywords in URLs, and those keywords at the same time in descriptions, in other snippets, in other parts of about the fold of a page. And that gives you a hint that there's something dodgy going on here at this side. It's some shady usage of a page. So it shouldn't be like this. So, and then you start thinking about what we are going to serve to user, and you need to be in the shoes of Google. So I was trained very hard to understand, to create an unbiased decision for a page, for a website. And after a while, you need to gain some trust from the other team members. And after you get the trust, then your actions are automatically applied to manual penalties. So, of course, we were taking one-by-one penalties, but scaling up part was the most significant part of what we do. Otherwise, as I mentioned, it will be a one-by-one job and never end. So you are always going to be much slower than the spammers. And at the end, I created some guides. Okay, these are the patterns of spam. So a spam can have this element, and then we were implying those elements to the big data, so to query MapReduce and something like this. And they were trying to be integrated into the search algorithms. So like pipelines to the algorithms.
Okay, so I'm just trying to clarify. So often when we see manual actions, some of them will be like one-offs, like this person did this, but often when we see it, like we'll see like a big paid links manual actions go across thousands of websites or whatever the number is. That seems like there is some type of automation in terms of data collection on which sites are doing that. Somebody wrote some type of, let's say, Python script. Maybe his name is Murat. And basically what happened was, all right, you collected all these sites that are participating in this link scheme. You fed it into this manual actions database. Somebody reviewed it at a higher level, maybe a manager, and then said, all right, this is legit. Let's go ahead and issue all these manual actions. Is that correct somewhat?
Well, it's basically like generally applies to what we did. Like it's not just a part of what we did.
Right.
most of the bigger part is actually including more clever solutions, because although this sounds like it's kind of an automatic thing, it wasn't actually. It includes a lot of manual analysis and a lot of manual process. But after a while, you start seeing some patterns. Like it's like the Matrix movie. When Neo got like enlightened, he starts seeing code. So it's the same thing. When I look at a site, or for example, even I don't look at a site, but you just tell me the URL's name, I have an idea of what to do. And after a while, you create some parts of code, but this is not integrated into engineering. It is not a part of algorithms. And then it starts crawling the entire web. And as you have mentioned, people needs to approve this. People needs to say that, okay, what the spam fighter says is actually true. It can be applied to a vast majority. Then it goes live, and boom, it's like a penalty.
So would you say that some of your, I guess, data mining or whatever you've done on which some of the patterns you picked up on using whatever techniques you used, that might have been implemented in, let's say, the Penguin algorithm by an engineer?
Well, it probably gives like a 1%, 2% idea to the engineers what they do, because definitely my team was collaborated with Pepsi engineering, and also probably Paul Hart's team as well.
Right.
We were also collaborating with WTAs like Gary, John Miller, and Zineb. So of course we were feeding them a lot with information. And after a while, you understand the usage, like the engagement metrics of users, and what kind of spam is trending more, and what should be prioritizing, what should we prioritize in order to catch these spam issues. And of course, they give some fundamental ideas to engineers.
Got it. So just so I understand how you fit into this puzzle. So you have like Paul Har, which is like the head of ranking. You have Matt Cutts, which was the head of search quality. You have somebody like John and Gary and Zineb that are kind of involved in webmaster communication. But you were also involved in webmaster communication, but you weren't part of their team necessarily.
Exactly. So WTAs are not just there for webmaster communication, but they are also listening to webmasters. So they are using different techniques to understand what webmasters' issues are. And they're also listening to the Search Console, the usage metrics of whatever the tools that we had, like Google had. And I was part of the community team, like we were calling it Webmaster Relations outreach team. And my role was to guide the Turkish community. So drive the Turkish webmasters to fit the guidelines. And of course, I was collaborating with John, with Zineb, and with Maria Mova. So I was working very closely with Andrei, because he is really great on driving the Russian market. And as you know, Google has a rival there, and they are much better in, like, Google's the underdog in Russia, but the Yandex is better. So he was doing the best of him to drive the community, and I was getting some lessons from him, trying to apply to the Turkish market. But there was also a funny part of it. So I was also going to the Northern Islands, going to Germany, different countries, to get more practice going on. And as I was also able to speak English and German, so I was able to communicate with those webmasters. But my main target was to drive the Turkish community, of course.
Interesting. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about one type of spam detection that you came up with that probably Google wouldn't care if you talked about, like something that they squashed already with an algorithm that doesn't work anymore, that maybe you found out, oh my God, this is something like amazing that they were doing like 5 years ago?
Well, that's really a fantastic question, because there was a big issue. Probably you might remember, you can recall that in 2014, in September, Google banned, like Google penalized very drastically huge lots of like many media outlets in Turkey. and they were including a local version of CNN and the sites that have 10 million traffic each day. And it seems like it's a random action. It seems like it's a, okay, just penalize kind of action from our side. And I wasn't able to speak at that moment when I was part of Google, although I really wanted to. But I only can touch this issue a little bit more because this was the way to educate the ecosystem. So it wasn't Google wasn't trying to show stick, but it was just trying to solve an issue, and that was the utmost point it can go. So in Google, like in my team, we had metrics. We had metrics to understand if we are doing great things or not. So we were measuring itself or itself to understand if we are targeting goods, if we are going well enough. And when we did that action, we took this action, the metrics went crazy. So we were like touching a great number of stuff going on in Turkish ecosystem. And I started working as an SEO consultant like 6 months ago in a company here. And I'm working with some media outlets clients. So I know that they got their lessons because they were trying so hard, the algorithms, the freshness algorithm, by using keyword stuffing, by just taking out all the trending keywords and then just creating a low quality article for that and then just ranking. So the project was a huge project and many different stakeholders from Google were all together. For example, we bind Google News search results to normal search results, organic search results. This was a huge step. And there was also different partners in that process. But this kind of spam will not probably be a kind of spam that we will, like Google will take an action. Because it was quite a topic that is really gray. Like those websites are very huge and we were doing it in bulk, like penalized a huge set of websites just at the same time for a period. So that was really hard action to take. And it was mainly the success of my team, which listened to me and I showed them what's going on. So I remember the day there was a Persuade meteor shower and Google had a doodle for that. And from Google.com TR, you were clicking that doodle and the first 10 results, like top 10 results, they were all spam by the type of black hat. So this is the spam type that you remove them from index. So that was a specific type of spam. And I had many examples like this, but it will be too much detail, I guess.
Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. So now, obviously now you're not at Google anymore. You're working in I guess an SEO, SEM agency in Turkey. So I guess describe your job, and then I have questions around like how do you separate what you know in terms of working at Google as a search quality person versus how you do your day-to-day job.
Sure. I started like 6 months ago here in SEM, what we call in Turkey SEM. It's, I guess, the biggest performance agency here in Turkey and competing with the global performance agencies like GroupM, like iProspect. So this is one of the best in Turkey and working with the biggest and the hugest e-commerce sites, media outlets, financial clients and like this. So what my role here is to work as a consultant and create solutions for certain problems. And I actually call myself as an SEO consultant, but I can define myself as a user experience marketing guy. Because what I basically do is to understand the user metrics. So the daily basis, I'm using different web analytics tool to understand what's going on the site. Because that was what Google was trying to do. It's not only about the on-page optimization or off-page optimization. So it's not really that important to make your site visible to Google. So it's an integral part, it's a fundamental part of what you need to do. But the next step is much more challenging, which is listen to the user and try to understand what they're saying. So as you can't go to each client of your website and ask, what do you think about my site? So therefore, you need to use clever tools and you need to have kind of strategies, roadmaps to solve some definite problems, definite roadblocks. So I'm really, really happy that I joined this team and start doing this job, because it gives me some kind of a feeling of power of what I can change. And the part that I worked at Google is not, I guess, only the technical side, it's about technical side. So I can't really say that, okay, what I learned at Google made me an SEO guy. But what I learned at Google was actually giving me more idea to how to understand user. Because I was analyzing the life of a query every day. So I was trying to understand what Google thinks about a specific query, and what about a specific query creates a type, like what is this vertical about? So what is this query is about? People search for this query. What are their actually motives when they are asking this? So Google is trying to analyze these. Google is doing huge amount of different analysis that even actually I wouldn't know. But actually, as I worked there for quite a long period, I had time to estimate what's going on. And I can imply this to my job at the moment. So that differs me from many different consultants, I guess. But I don't think that it's actually, even I wouldn't work in Google, there's huge lots of resources that you can ask for and read on and develop yourself. But going back to my advantage, while I worked at Google, I had to know, like, I had the chance to know the person of contacts of each issue. So I had to know right people, and I had an access to go into the amazing resources that you get the best idea of what actually the issues are. So this is like going to university and learning, for example, studying computer science and understanding it. But it doesn't give you, it doesn't make you a huge computer scientist. You need to work on it, analyze it by yourself. So I can tell this.
Interesting. Curious. So, is there a reason that you want to share why you left Google, or you rather not talk about that?
No, it's a good question. So I don't get those kind of questions from conferences I go, but mainly from my teammates or people that are linked to me. So there are certain reasons for that, like both professional and both personal. So, but the major reason why I wanted to leave Google was because I want to get out of my comfort zone. So move out of my comfort zone, move out of what I do day-to-day basis and do the same thing repetitively. Although it's a great way to solve very complex problems, it gives you, like, it limits you a little bit. And the following reason is I wanted to move to something quite new, very different for me, so that I can start learning from zero, or learning from, let's say, 1 out of scale 10, and to ramp up with a steep learning curve. Because I didn't do SEO at all when I was at Google, so I wasn't trying to make a site much better, but I was trying to find the sites that are not actually implied with our policies and not giving the best user experience. So that was like 180% different from what I did. But of course, it was a new subject for me. So I really wanted to pursue a new subject. So that's one of the, like, that. These are two main reasons why I leave Google.
Interesting. So, right. So now, so you only worked back in the day Google as kind of like trying to figure out, why are people manipulating these search results? Why are these SEOs, webmasters, what are they doing? Why are they doing it? How do we stop them from doing it? It was kind of like us versus them. And then you kind of got into webmaster communication, she told us, where you kind of like, oh, this is why people are doing it. But your perception must have changed in the past 6 months around the SEO community. Or I could be making that up. You could say, no, it hasn't changed. But the question is, how's your perception changed about why SEOs do what they do, why webmasters do what they do, why do they might get in trouble, why they might accidentally or on purpose spam Google? Has your perception changed around that? And if so, how would you talk to your colleagues, your former colleagues at Google, and say, you know what, it's really not so bad maybe that this site got hit by a penguin or whatever it might be. It's really, they really had good intentions. And so how would you describe all of that, I guess?
Well, I created like a perception when I was at Google to understand what is spam and to create a gut feeling of when you face a site, so what's going on with the site. But that, of course, helps me when I start working as an SEO consultant at some point, because the perception didn't change too much, actually, because the main difference is that when I was at Google, I was trying to be very careful about what I do, because I need to gain trust from other colleagues to the actions that I try to take and the analysis I make. So I was always trying to persuade people that, okay, I'm not biased at all. But somehow, as we are all human, you might create some error. So, and this error, if it is applied in scale, then it might create some false positives. So that was the biggest responsibility I had. I should be doing 0 false positive. So it's like a Kaizen method when you are producing, manufacturing things. And so I feel released that I don't have this responsibility anymore, because now I can look aside and I definitely say, okay, the panda must have hit you in no time, and you got hit. So that's not a problem. The problem is that your perception, for example, I go to my clients and say, so you thought that Google is a simple machine, that we can reverse engineer that, or you thought that Google is not understanding Turkish at all. So many people have this misunderstanding about how Google works, I guess, because they think, especially the non-English community, so they think Google doesn't understand other languages that much. It's not the problem of understanding the queries or the content in different languages. The problem is, other than English, many content is not that quality enough to be in the top 10 results. So Google is not proud of its top 10 results, like I will try to say. So of course, Google is proud of what they do. But from my perspective at the moment, which has changed, is it's the language-specific problem. It's the market's own problem. So the ecosystem has not really developed that much like the English-speaking markets. For example, e-commerce is only 2% or 3% in Turkey if you try to calculate what's going on in entire commerce. But in US, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like more than 10%. So we have a lot to improve as non-English speakers markets. So that was the problem. That was the biggest change of perception, because I was really trying not to do any error at all, because that was my aim of my career in Google. So in Google, it's not meeting expectations. It's not about meeting expectations. It's always exceeding the expectations which was set by yourself and complied with your manager. So that's why I had 0 chance to create any errors, and therefore I was like trying to understand. Okay, Panda not had to be applied to this side, or Penguin hit this side, but it must be false positive. Or what about negative SEO kind of questions? But now I know that Google takes actions in bulk, and Google is doing its job very good in 99%, and the 1% might be bugs and, well, language specific issues, I guess.
Interesting. The reason we're doing this, I guess, interview is because you commented about what Andre said about machine learning and spam, specifically the spam algorithm. And Andre basically said that machine learning will be coming in the future somewhat to the spam algorithm or to spam fighting algorithms. And you said it's pretty much here. It's here, in that Google's algorithms are using machine learning specifically within the spam thing. So we know about RankBrain, and RankBrain probably has very little to do with spam detection because it's more about the query analysis and so forth, which obviously helps figure out search quality and what should be in the top 10 results and so forth. But around spam detection, you said, again, it's all about patterns. And you talk about patterns and patterns and patterns, and analyzing those patterns with machines and machine learning is pretty much I'm not a PhD in this stuff, but if you could describe why you think Andre said it's coming and it's not here yet versus why you said it is here, it has been being used. What is the difference in terms of what you were saying versus what Andre said?
Yeah, as far as I've seen while I worked there, there was definite advantages of using machines and teaching them how to identify patterns and how to actually create a confidence interval that is good enough to go with it. But I believe why Andre said this is because of Google's philosophy. So as you know, for example, you might remember when Gmail was invented, it started with beta, like Gmail beta, and the beta was there for like more than 4 years or something. So Google is really, how do you say, perfectionist about what they do. So it differs from Facebook in that manner too much. So Facebook is like a hacker. So I did this, it failed, that I don't care. But Google don't do this too much. So they are really progressing up from beta stage, from alpha stage, from beta stage, and which is visible to users. And then they go to the next stage, which is, okay, we now really believe that our product works quite well. I guess that's why he might have been saying, so machine learning is going to become a part of what we do. So because Google thinks better, that's why, I guess.
Okay. So it's funny because people like me and a lot of people in the SEO community, like a handful, really like watch and listen very carefully to what these Googlers are saying. So Andre, John, Gary, Deneb, et cetera, et cetera. And often, some are more vocal than the others. Andre seems to be saying a lot more than a John Mueller would say. Like John Mueller would say maybe like half of what, or probably even like 10% of what he said. And it's not like John knows probably less than Andre. I assume they probably know just as much as each other. Gary too. Gary's kind of in between. And I mean, you've been in this for a while. What do you think are the things that SEOs misinterpret the most when these Googlers are talking? What is like the thing that we shouldn't jump on and say, oh my God, they said this? What are those big misinterpretations that you think that you laugh at when you see I write an article or somebody else writes an article that John said this or Gary said that?
Yeah, that's when I started to talk about my passions with my manager, that I want to become an integral part of outreach team. He sent me to a training, and the training was given by PR people. So I get to learn how to talk about a company, like on behalf of the company in concrete manners. But this changed a little bit more in time. So like I got strict guidelines about not to say this, not to say that, not to touch this question. If you get this question, just rumble up and give back. But after a while, Google became more vocal. So Andre is a great example of that. So he is he's driving the, as I mentioned, Russian community really well. He's going to the technical side of what he do, and he had a hands-on experience of spam and understand user side of how a query is handled. And definitely people are talking with engineers, so they try to understand the question, like the problems from the very low level. But John Mueller has been more of kind of like a, I guess, Matt Cutts European version. So, and when they speak, when they type a line, or when they write an article, so I get to understand a little bit more that what words they are using to cover things. And I will give a guideline to people who are trying to understand what WTAs or Andre says, is that you should sit back, relax, and try to collect data. Like just get the points that they highlighted and try to understand why why they say this, and why they say this at that time, and how. So then you shouldn't really focus on too much what they have said, but it's more of to give you a bit of more detailed information. It's not like, it's not like their job to give you more detailed information. It's to give you more confidence and more guidance to you to look at which kind of aspect of what you try to do. Let me give you an example. For example, they are talking about, they don't talk about too much like Panda works like this or Penguin works like this. They always say like, focus on user. So what is the philosophy behind focus on user? It's the best practice that you should apply. Because as I mentioned previously when we started to talk, it's not only about to show your website to Google and make it clearly crawled and indexed very well. So it's about that's the basic part of what you should do as an SEO or marketing or digital marketing guy. So the challenging part is that understand user. So and understanding user is only able to read those metrics, and therefore you need to use great tools. You need to have a perspective of what is going on and try to analyze those data. Data by itself doesn't give you too much information. You need to transform information or data into insights and wisdom. So this only happens if you collect all the data and start scrambling them and then try to get insights and then put it to your website, like implement it, and then try to see the what's going on. So therefore, like using those data, like collecting the data, is the important part. And this is mainly, you can get some ideas from WTS and Andre. So start collecting the data. But after a point, you need to identify what's going on from this data and then implement this to your clients so that there becomes magic moments.
So it's interesting. So I assume most of these webmaster outreaches do they have to go through like every few months, go through a PR training course or something, or that's just one time, that's it?
Well, I guess a couple of times. Like we used to have roundtables like each week almost, or once in a month, or bi-monthly, or quarterly. So it's going from a strategic level to a tactical level, and from strategical levels, like going to PR trainings, kind of like this, they happen like 2 times or 1 time a year. But it's also important to ramp up yourself, presenting to audiences and talking clearly about what you do. And it's not important to have all the information in your head, but if you're in outreach, you need to be able to tell these to even from the basic audience to the expert audience. So therefore, it's not only happens by education, but training, but you need to be in there and be in action. That's why the frequencies of trainings are not more than the actions. So, as you know, those guides, like Andre is a guide as well in Russian Webmaster Forum, we were like writing one by one responses to user questions. Why we were doing this? So, like, is it really impactful to write one-to-one responses? Not really, but it's also one-to-many. So when you answer a question in a manner, it also becomes an answer to many questions. And also it's an exercise for yourself to get in touch with the community that you're trying to drive into a good direction. That's why many outreaches go into site clinics, go into industry events, go into trainings, inside trainings in company or out company. So it's all tried to find the best answer in a possible way.
So, did you ever mess up big time?
Well, I will say I messed up many times while I was working in Google because of the core job. So it was hard to learn some things. It was hard to understand the outcome of processing huge data, large sets of data. But I wouldn't say I messed up really much in front of an audience on live. Even though for example, even I think I did, it wasn't really understood by the community, I guess, clearly. Because
Is there one thing that you remember saying that, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't say that, even to this day?
Not exactly, not
No?
really.
Is there an example of somebody else in Google saying, like, causing a big PR storm internally? Not something they said back years ago?
Yeah, well, I had examples like this, but I wouldn't like to go into detail. Let's say it wasn't about my team, it was more about the language-specific sales teams.
Cool. So you did have the access to actually penalize a website. So if I did something bad, you could click on a button and bam, I'm messed up for a while. Yes?
Yeah, in some ways.
In some ways. Was that like a huge sense of responsibility? Did you not sleep at night because of it?
Well, definitely. I can't really say that I didn't sleep too much at all, because as I mentioned earlier, like, it wasn't about meeting your expectations when you talk to your manager, when you talk with your colleagues. But, like, people were really smart, your colleagues, and what you tried to solve was really hard, a really complex problem. So therefore, I was feeling too much responsible about my own career, and also to create a problem that will make me seem silly to myself. So it was all about myself. So of course, like, creating a problem, like creating an error which reflects to thousands of people, is not too good. But it's also your own sense. When you start sleeping, then you feel like, what did I do? So therefore, in order to prevent these, we were like one of the probably the most careful team in entire Google, I guess. Because before taking actions, there were a couple of different stage to check what we do, to get more idea from other team members, to get more idea from the cross team members sometimes. And the penalization wasn't really like randomly on going saying like, okay, I hate these guys, let's take his side out of from index. Or it was mainly like a guideline, try to understand and try to be not biased by any sense. Therefore, it was a big responsibility for your own self.
Okay. It seemed like you were under a lot of stress working at Google.
Yeah, kind of. But it was also great fun. So as you have visited different offices, I guess you've seen, like, it was huge fun working with those people and doing all these different stuff.
They treat you very well there. I mean, you have everything at your fingertips. So now that you're working at a normal company, what do you miss the most about office life?
Well, what I really miss most is the environment, because Dublin office. So I worked in Dublin office for 5 years, and it was the headquarters of EMEA. Therefore, there was like 40 plus different people from different countries. So I guess like 45 or 50 different languages have been spoken day to day in each moment. So it was a great and fantastic feeling that you get to see all those different cultures at the same time. And it was really easy to get in touch and get in contact with different cultures, get different perspectives from people, and reach the information from very different angles. So I really miss out that, because I guess it's going to be impossible for me if I don't go back to Google to find out a place like this, work with different people from all around the world, and work on complex problems all the time. That was fun, stressful, but also overwhelming and making you kind of like satisfied.
Interesting. Would you ever want to go back to Google, like in the short term, or you had enough?
Well, I wouldn't really think myself going back to Dublin, as you might guess, the gloomy and dark weather and dark humor. So I would love to stay here in Turkey for a while, but it was my childhood dream to live in US for a moment. And when I had the first chance to see different cities in US, I was really attracted by San Francisco, and I had a really, really short time there. So why not? Like, I would definitely like to join a team with a good, how to say, with a good job description, let's say. Because like, I wouldn't just join Google to join Google, you know. If there will be a good role that fits me, and there will be a good problem to solve there, and if I'm eligible enough, so why not? So I think I had a good exit interview. So.
Interesting. So there's been a lot of symbols of people leaving Google. So obviously a bunch of people in your department or in the related department. We had Pedro, we had Pierre, we had, I'm not going to go through all the list, but there's a lot of people who've left Google over the years. The most symbolic, well, we had Matt Cutts, who's not really leaving, or who's partially left. He's pretty much not working, just on the healthcare plan, I guess, there. But he's still very involved. He was at the Google Dance. He keeps on top of everything, which is pretty funny. But the biggest person that left is Amit Singhal. So he's obviously the head of search. He left just, I think, like a month ago officially, a little around then. A lot of people are talking in the industry that he left, and now that I forgot his name, the person in charge of RankBrain, he took over that position. And he wasn't even with Google for all that long. He was acquired with his other company, and now he's running it. So people are thinking like, all right, the search engine, the algorithm is going to drastically change to this machine learning independent algorithm with that symbolic leaving the reason with me leaving. So you know, been at Google. You just left, I think, about 6 months ago. So I don't think 6 months ago even Amit was talking about leaving. I think it was fairly recent, based on the limited knowledge that I have. The question is like, what does him leave? I'm curious, why do you think he left? Two is, what do you think it symbolizes for the algorithm going forward? So I guess, what is your personal feeling on why he left?
Yeah, I can only talk about my personal feeling, of course, because I wasn't even there. Like, I left Google 1 year ago. I wasn't even there when he communicated that he's leaving. But I remember I read his last post when he was at Google Plus, and it was saying he's trying to pursue his philanthropic targets, I guess. But that's, of course, not really satisfying in answering all the questions that we had. I guess, in my humble opinion, that symbolizes. That symbolizes like after like a huge period in Google, it counts like 4 times from a normal company. Like working in Google plus 15 years is actually equals to like working 50 years for a company. Which might be quite boring, I guess. So probably he had more of his own enthusiasm about work, something very new. Like, and
you don't think it was anything related to like the machine learning group pushing and, you know, being like brought to the forefront of the search algorithm, and Amit's not really a machine learning type of person, maybe his background's not in machine learning, and because of that he's like, all right, I had enough, I'm done with this, I brought this, you know, if Google's changing direction, I'm leaving. You don't think it's about that?
Well, I don't really think so, because Amit was the guy who had a lot of vision when Google created How Search Works website. So he gets to do what he wants, I guess. Like, I didn't work directly with him. I didn't even have a long conversation with him. I attended a couple of conferences while he was there. And but I guess Google is not a conventional company. Google has never been a conventional company. It's not a company that, like, it's a company, for example, it works in interplanetary IP protocols, like internet protocols, and self-driving cars and like this. So how come this kind of a company makes someone like piss off? So it's not that easy, I guess. So probably it's more of his own. It's not about the attitude. It's not about, I guess, the technical issues, but it's more of like his dreams to follow them, and probably different career ambitions he has.
All right, tell me something shocking that no SEO knows that you think they should know.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you change your title, like you will be in first page.
Awesome. Is there anything? I mean, we're about pretty much done. There's like another 5 minutes or so. Is there anything you want to tell the webmaster community, maybe related to you, or maybe related to how we could better perceive Google in terms of what their mission is, or just in general? Just feel free to talk.
Oh, thanks. First of all, like, it's a pleasure to talk with you. It was great fun. I really enjoyed this hour. I didn't even understand it was an hour. So if you leave me, I will talk here more. So it's great to get in touch with the community, and great to be like taken serious by people like you. So you've been there for a long time. Like, you have a lot of experiences on the SEO communities, and people respect you and follow you. So I guess what someone who wants to be excel in search engine optimization needs to understand, the search engine optimization is actually under the umbrella of user experience marketing. So people tend to believe that actually Google doesn't really think too much about privacy. There is actually no Chinese wall between paid and search. So people think too much about the myths. And lately, John Murat was also like going nuts about the conversation of, you remember, 301 directions and 302. So those kind of issues are actually really small parts of the general picture. So therefore, in order to see the picture, you need to be zooming out of what you do, I guess, and not just focusing on SEO terms, not just focusing on, okay, writing title, doing this description kind of stuff, but try to analyze what is the next big thing, because this is how Google thinks. So Google always thinks about next big thing, and Google's mission is to pull out all the information of the world and recognize it, and also order it. So therefore,
let's end with that. So what, in your opinion, what is the next big thing? What should SEOs be thinking about?
Well, definitely it's a hard question, but I will say it will be going to be more like the machine that is actually predicting for you beforehand you even ask a question. So I really loved and get shocked by the project of Google Now when I first see it. And it was also taking care of a product manager, a Turkish product manager, Barış. And it was proud of me as well, just national feelings. And I guess that kind of projects are going to be dominating more, because Google is not a search company, it's actually an artificial intelligence company. So it's probably the biggest AI in the world, and has the hugest infrastructure in the world, and working in most shocking projects that you can, like a normal company, even think about. So the next big thing, it's hard to estimate, but it's probably part of like probably a topic that is related to AI.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate everything. I appreciate the time you spent with us and everything you've done for the webmaster community while at Google, and now that you're not with Google, everything you do for the webmaster community outside of Google. And yeah, again, appreciate everything. Thank you so much for coming on the show, or whatever we're calling it. And thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me here and taking your time. So I wish you a good day, and hope to see you again.
Definitely will. All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.